everybody, it's Lily and welcome to another day on the Book Circus. So today I thought I would film a little segment I'm going to call Pages Through the Ages. Something that I at least have noticed on BookTube is that we get a lot of the most current titles that are coming out, which makes sense. People want to know what's new, what's popular, what's up and coming. You know, there's nothing wrong with that, but we never really get a look at books that may be a bit older, but people still really enjoyed. And even going past that, I could be wrong, but I personally haven't seen anyone do sort of a recap of books that have influenced them throughout their lives. So books from when they started reading through till now. So that's what I'm going to do today. I am going to just go through some books that I feel defined certain parts of my life. They're books that I loved and adored then and still do now. They had, for the most part, a really positive impact on my reading life or my life in general. And they're books that I hold near and dear to my heart. Most of them, if not all of them, I have read at least twice. A lot of them more than that. As you'll see, some of these books are very loved and worn, almost falling apart for some of them. But for me, that's the sign of a well-loved book. So I guess let's just jump right on in. So the first books on my list, some of these are standalone or part of a series. Some of them are standalone, but there's more than one. They're just not part of a series. You'll see. But so the first books on this little list of my Pages Through the Ages are books that really got me into reading in the first place. When I was a kid, I did not like to read. I think I've mentioned it before on this channel. I just wasn't into reading when I was a little kid. I especially hated reading out loud. I still don't like to read out loud. I think it's because my eyes move faster than my mouth and my brain do. So I'm taking in the words faster than I can actually say them, which makes me stumble and look like an idiot. So I just don't like reading out loud, and that's a lot of what we had to do in school as little kids to make sure that you actually knew how to read. It makes sense, but it was something that I really dreaded and hated. And I also really didn't like the types of books that were being suggested to me. As I think I've said before sometime on this channel, a lot of the books that are suggested to younger kids are sort of relatable books. They're just about little kids going on little adventures. They're for the most part, realistic fiction, and I just wasn't interested at all in those. So I just sort of didn't read, and it was concerning a bit, I think, for my parents because they're both really big readers, and of course they wanted me to be able to read. It's an important thing to be able to do. So I don't know how I got introduced to these books. I couldn't tell you who introduced me to them. But some of the books that really got me into reading were the Goosebumps books by R.L. Stine. I absolutely adored these books when I finally ended up finding them. They're all sort of kid horror books, and I don't honestly read that much horror anymore. R.L. Stine actually came out with another horror book a few years ago, which I picked up and enjoyed. But for the most part, I don't really read that much horror. But I loved these books as a kid. They're pretty short, which could keep my young person attention span, I think, which was good. But they were also fairly fast-paced, which I think definitely helped. And they're definitely not realistic at all. Some of these are some of my favorite. A lot of them are almost sort of verging on a little science fiction-y. So these books are near and dear to my heart. I actually ended up saving a number of them. I have a few more, I think 4 more than this, hidden away, my favorites. I couldn't stand to give them up, so I have held on to them all this time. Another book that I picked up a little bit after the Goosebumps books, but it was sort of within the same vein, and around the same time period. Some of these kind of blur together a little bit. It's hard to say exactly, like this year was when I got into these books. They sort of span a time period in my life. And as I've said, I've reread them all pretty much at least a couple of times. So to say, they only were influencing me on this year is a little unreasonable. But anyway, so the next book is The Mysterious Matter of I Am Fine by Diane Stanley. And I loved this book as a kid. It was sort of the first time I had seen anything like this. Again, it's sort of in that horror genre. Again, I don't really read that much of that now, but hey, if it got me into reading, that's all that matters. You know, it's still fun to read. Obviously, I still hold it pretty near and dear if I still have it today. It's in pretty good condition for as old as it is. So, another horror genre type book that got me into reading when I was younger. So, then I have a book that probably quite a while after, like, Goosebumps and things like that. I was a pretty well-established reader, but I was still a young person. I still have very fond memories of this book and reading it. I've read this book probably at least 3 or 4 times. I loved it that much. I know exactly what happens, or I did at the time. I haven't read it in a long time, but I, at the time, read it over and over again. Which is weird to my mom because she's the type of person who will read a book once and be like, okay, great, moving on, throw it away. You know, and I'm like, no, save the books forever. I'll reread them. And she's like, rereading? Like, what the heck? Why would you ever reread a book? Don't you know exactly what happens? Yes, but that makes it even better in my opinion because you're looking forward to all the good parts. So anyway, this is a book by an author who I really adored and I think that a lot of people know of. The author is Gail Carson Levine. She also wrote Ella Enchanted, Dave at Midnight, Fairest, a whole bunch of other things. But this book is one that I adored. And honestly, I still think about it a lot today, and I still really love the story. And that is The Two Princesses of Bamar. This story was unique for me at the time because there was no prince to save the day in this book. I loved that, you know, it's like sort of go out and save yourself. Or in this case, you know, save your own sister. Don't wait for someone else to do it for you. Plus, it's just a fun story. There's dragons and giants and, you know, fairies and things like that. I just love this book. And it's something that I'll probably keep forever. The next books on my little list here, I probably started reading end of elementary school or beginning of middle school. So around 6th or 7th grade. And there again, it's more of an author than just like a series. Or a standalone book. These books are still very near and dear to me. I actually reread a bunch of them not too long ago. I still adore these books. So they're pretty much all of the books ever written by Tamara Pierce. This is just a selection I brought up from where we keep them. These are Along with the Lioness, which are maybe her best known ones. The ones that I read first at least. And then we also have the Immortal series, Protector of the Small, Circle of Magic. There's also the Trickster series, and then the Becca Cooper series as well. Anyway, there's a lot, so I could not bring all of those and show you in this video. I would be carrying them around like this, you wouldn't even be able to see me. But I loved pretty much all of these books, especially Alana, which was my first experience with Tamara Pierce. Like some of the other books that I started to read around this age, it was about strong female heroes. And it's something that I have continued to enjoy reading about. What I especially loved about Alana was that she wasn't afraid of the consequences of going after for what she wanted. I just loved how, again, it was these strong female characters who sort of stood apart and they could stand by themselves without needing really anyone else. They could do things based on their own merit, their own skill. And I love how, you know, not every series follows the same characters, but a bunch of the series are tied together, even if they're following a different protagonist. And I love how we get to see this kingdom grow. You know, so it starts with Alana, and she kind of introduces this idea of having female knights. And then in Protector of the Small, we get our next female knight. And then we also get the Queen's Riders, and we get, you know, women kind of become more and more empowered in this society. And I think that's really great to see, especially in fantasy, where a lot of the times stories are based around kings, princes, male knights, and things like that. So for me, these books were sort of an introduction to that strong female lead. So these next sort of set of books I read sort of all around the same time, probably around middle school, early high school. So anyway, the first one of those books, or series of books, is The Uglies by Scott Westerfeld. I love these books. I liked the sci-fi in them. Up to this point, I hadn't been reading a lot of sci-fi. I still don't read tons, but it was a lot different than the things that I had been reading, which were more fantasy. And I don't know, I just loved this world that was created, and this idea, I think that's still pretty poignant and, you know, something that we should still think about today, about the importance of looks and the way you appear and sort of the station in life that can give you. And, you know, I just enjoyed the story as well. Obviously, for a lot of these books, I just enjoyed the story too. The next book is, again, part of a series. It's a book I've read several times. It's definitely, at least for the age that I read it the first time, it was something that explored some pretty heavy themes. I haven't read it in a while, but I might reread them again soon because I heard that some new books are coming out soon, and I am so excited. But this is The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman. I loved these books. There's 3 in the series so far. Honestly, at the time, I wasn't like super into all the themes and things that are presented in these books. It was just a really unique story for me at the time, and it's something that I have read several times. I just liked how different this world was, at least compared to the things that I was reading at the time. You know, so it's sort of just as simple as that. I thought it was a great book, and now I do see more of the deeper themes that are kind of going on in this book. It's just a book that I remember sort of picking up and being kind of amazed by. All right, this next book I don't think any of you have probably heard of before. I read it probably 8th grade for the first time. I know it's like a super unknown book, and that is Twilight. It was the first sort of book that I picked up because sort of a fad, I guess. I had heard a bunch of kids at school talking about this book. I had a close friend who had read it and who had really enjoyed it, and I still do think it's kind of a fun story. Especially, I like the first book a lot. You know, I'll admit it. I'm not gonna, you know, hide the fact that I enjoyed this. I didn't love the next books quite as much, but I did like the first book, and I won't deny it. And nowadays, I kind of like to be on the cusp, the cutting edge, sort of. I prefer to read books before they're big. Like, I read it before it was cool, like a hipster. You know, not to say that I wouldn't read a book if it was already popular, but yeah, I mean, during the time, it was just a big part of everyone's life, I think. So I would be terribly remiss not to add this to the list. So this next book, I can't remember exactly when the first time I read it was, but it was probably either late middle school or early high school. So this book is kind of falling apart. I've probably read it at least 5 or 6 times and would still definitely reread it. I've actually been contemplating rereading it recently. But the book is Crown Jewel by Sherwood Smith. I don't actually know if a ton of people know about this book. I didn't really ever hear about anyone talking about this, at least at the time. You know, I wasn't like on BookTube or Goodreads or anything like that at the time. And I did try sharing it with one of my friends once, and she kind of hated it. So, you know, maybe I'm like the only person who likes this book. But anyway, it's a combination of Crown Jewel and Court Jewel, which I believe were in the beginning 2 separate books. I've never seen them separate, but then again, this is the only copy of this I've actually ever seen. So who knows? Again, strong female lead. I love these characters to death. And I love also how in the first book you have sort of that typical, you know, it's a bit of a war story. It's more about, you know, fighting this battle, not like necessarily in the typical battlefield sense. We actually get away from that pretty quickly when we follow our character, Mel. And then in the second book, you get more of, you know, court duel, where they have to adapt to court life and all the things that come with that when they have never been a part of that. So I kind of liked that, you know, that we get kind of both sides of that. So if you haven't ever picked this up, I would recommend it. I mean, but it's falling apart. Like, the cover is like falling off, like. But I would recommend this, and it's something that I have read numerous times, so it had to make this list. Alrighty, we are now coming to the end, close to the end of this little Pages Through the Ages book talk, I guess. The next book on my list is another one that I haven't seen a lot about. Maybe, you know, people talked about it a while ago when it first came out. I don't really know. But anyway, it's a book that I personally love, especially the first one. It's part of a trilogy. I read this probably maybe junior, senior year of high school, something like that. I've, again, read this several times. Anyway, it's called Blood Red Road by Maura Young, and I love this book. I love the way it's written. I know it's probably not everyone's cup of tea. It's written in like a dialect. Our main character, Saba, is very uneducated. She lives in sort of a very screwed up world. She's not dumb, but she doesn't, you know proper English. So the whole book is written that way. And another thing that's a little odd is that there are no quotation marks when people start talking. So it can be a little hard to get used to figuring out when someone is talking and when it's sort of just like the narration. I personally love these books, and I love that it isn't written in your everyday kind of standard type of way. It might be a turnoff for a lot of people, but once you get used to it, I love the voice of Saba. I've said this about a lot of these books, I know, but they wouldn't be on the list if I didn't. All right, so that sort of brings me to, I guess, the last book on this list, and it's sort of a tentative book. I sort of felt like I needed to have something that defined now, or like kind of my college years. And I think that's sort of hard to say at this point in time. You know, looking back, I'm sure I'll easily be able to pinpoint something. But when you're living it, it's sort of hard to say exactly like, what was the defining book of this era? Well, I'm still living it, so I couldn't say exactly. At least for now, I'm going to have to go with essentially anything by Sarah J. Maas. I absolutely love her writing style. I love her stories. I love her characters. It's a book series, or a couple of series, that have really stuck out to me more than I think anything else that I've read in the recent past. I think this is going to have to take it for at least right now. I might come back here and be like, no, in a little while, but once some time passes. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed my little tour through my life, through my books. I'd love to hear about books that you think defined parts of your life, books that you'll cherish sort of forever, or still, kind of go back to. If you have any books like that, please let me know in the comments below. I love hearing about books that shaped other people and books that people hold dear to themselves, whether it's something well-known or not. Thanks for joining me on this little journey. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. I never know where to put the word of the day, so I guess I'll just go at the end again. Maybe I should surprise people. I sometimes put it at the beginning, sometimes in the middle, and sometimes at the end, so you have to search for it, if anyone even cares about the word of the day. I like the word of the day, and these are my videos, so I'm gonna have to deal with it. So the word of the video for this week is ephemeral, which means lasting only a day or lasting a very short time. Short and sweet, and that's how I like it. Just like the word, ephemeral. Lasting only a very short time. Okay, bye.